We are an imperfect people. We struggle, fail, and fall short, just like everyone else. We wander this world, one step at a time, moment by moment, place to place, walking the path laid out before us. We strive for righteousness, but miss the mark. We seek God, but lose our focus. We want to love deeply, but often forget how that works. We are a broken people, made whole only by the hand of God. In the end, our life is about one thing: Jesus. And although we don't pursue him perfectly, we still pursue him, one day at a time.
Well, if you have been ever married or in a relationship for more than 5 minutes, then you have certainly had at least one argument that is totally stupid, totally uncalled for, and makes absolutely no sense. Let me give you a personal example. I love how you're already laughing at this. One time, early in our marriage, Blair and I got into one of those fights. And I need you to understand, this was not about money or whose turn it was to do the dishes or about in-laws. This fight was about death, and specifically, whose death? Let me explain. We somehow got on this topic of if one of us were to meet our untimely demise, which one of us would be better off for our children to be left with as a single parent? And you would assume that two people who love each other very much would be gracious or even humble, right? Like, no, honey, of course they would be great with you, but that is not what happened. What happened is that somehow we got into a full-blown argument over who would be the worst option to have the children left with. We were both trying to win this argument that we would be the better parent. We were literally yelling at each other over a hypothetical funeral that had not happened. We were also in our early 20s, so our brains hadn't fully developed yet, so give us a little bit of credit. But here's why I tell you this, because if you're anything like me, you will go to war over the dumbest and smallest and most ridiculous stuff. We are natural-born fighters. We don't have to be taught how to contend for something. It's just wired into us. If you don't believe me, put 2 toddlers in an open room and leave 1 toy in there and watch what happens, right? And I can almost guarantee there is something in your life that you have a fully developed opinion on that does not matter at all, and you are willing to defend it to the death. Possibly your own death, but we've already covered that. Here's the thing, though. We were created to be fighters, but it has to be for the right thing. And today we're going to see that we don't fight to be kept, we fight because we're kept. And here's what's ridiculous. I can find energy for a fight that doesn't matter. The funeral that isn't happening, the dishwasher, the thermostat, somebody who is wrong on the internet at 11 p.m. I will show up for that. But let me describe a different kind of fight. It's the middle of the week. You're tired. Somebody at work says something about Jesus or about the Bible or about what Christians really believe, and it's not right, not even close. And so you feel that nudge to say something, but you don't. You just let it go. Because honestly, part of you's not even sure what you would say. You're not sure that you could explain what you believe or why you believe it. That is most of us, and I want to name it as honestly and gently as I can. Somewhere along the way, a lot of us stopped carrying our faith and we just started consuming it. Here's what I mean. We can be guilty of treating church like a streaming service. We show up and we let it play, and we decide if this week's episode was good. We'll say, I didn't really get much out of that. That guy, something was wrong with him. Or, man, that one really hit home. That's when Cameron or Michael or Doug preach. And we rate it and we review it. We are basically treating church like a Yelp review. 3 stars. Music was good. Parking was fine. Pastor was a little weird. In other words, we are an audience. We have become spectators. And there's a thing about being a spectator. You can love the team, but never once actually get out on the field yourself. This morning, we're kicking off a brand new sermon series in the book of Jude called Kept. And we're going to talk about, over the next 4 weeks, what it means to be kept in the faith, to contend or to fight for it, and what it means to speak the truth about what we believe. And it all points back to the same thing that we have been talking about as a church all year long: intentional discipleship. And it's my hope for you that when we reach the end of this series, that the definition of fighting for the faith means something different to you than it does this morning. See, I think a lot of us, if we're honest, we have drifted into one of 2 ditches. Either we want to fight about everything. We have an opinion on every issue, and we will argue anybody down, and we will contend all day long, just never actually for the faith. Or option 2, we just get very passive, and we've stopped fighting for anything. We're coasting, and we figure that faith is just something that the professionals handle, the pastors and the church staff, or the people up front on the stage. But the thing is, if our focus is truly on discipleship, on reaching out to other peoples, then we have to realize that we can't disciple anybody from the couch. We can't hand off something to somebody else that we're not holding ourselves. So let me ask us an uncomfortable question this morning. Have I become a spectator in the very thing that I am supposed to be guarding? If that stings a little bit, Jude is about to tell us that we were built for a fight. The problem is that a lot of us have just been aiming at the wrong target this whole time. So if you will, turn in your Bibles this morning to the book of Jude. It's a tiny letter. It's almost in the very back of the Bible. It's the last book of the Bible right before Revelation. And don't feel bad if you've never read it. A lot of people haven't. It's little and tiny, but we're going to soon find out what is missing. And so Jude is actually the half-brother of Jesus. Jude also has other brothers, but he's the half-brother of Jesus. And here's a fun fact for you. You can take this home and share it at dinner tonight with your family, and they can be really impressed by how smart you are. Jude is actually a shortened version of Judas. It's kind of like a nickname, kind of like Zakk and Zachary. These were used interchangeably in the ancient world, but modern Bible translators eventually just started referring to this guy, Jesus' brother, as Jude to avoid any confusion with the guy who betrayed Jesus. Can you imagine how awkward Thanksgiving would have been when Jude showed up and people were still calling him Judas? So we seek to avoid that in Scripture. All right, here is how Jude opens. Verse 1, take a look with me. He says, Jude, a servant of Jesus Christ and a brother of James, one of his other brothers, to those who are called, loved by God the Father, and kept for Jesus Christ. I want you to notice something about how Jude opens this letter here. Before he asks us to do a single thing, before he says to fight or to contend or gives any other command, he first tells us who we already are. And he gives us 3 words in this verse to describe us. First, he says we are called. That means that God came looking for us. We didn't find our way to him. God initiated. He picked up the phone first. And then Jude says that we are loved. And notice, he doesn't say we will be loved if we finally get our act together. He says that we are loved, present tense, right now, here this morning. It doesn't matter what you did yesterday or how awful your week was. He loves us now. And then the third thing that I want you to hold on to for the next 4 weeks is that he says we are kept. Kept means guarded. It means watched over, held securely. It's the word that you'd use for something precious that somebody is making sure doesn't get lost. In the original language, that word is written in a tense that means something that has been done in the past and also something that is still true right now. We were kept and we are kept, meaning that it is both settled and it is ongoing. God didn't just grab a hold of us once, it means he hasn't let go. And look at what Jude says about each of us being kept. Verse 2, he says, "May mercy, peace, and love be multiplied to you." This is why we are kept, so that mercy, peace, and love can be multiplied to us and in us. And this word kept, Jude is going to use it again and again throughout this very short book and throughout this series. This whole letter is held together by this one word. And the very first time that he uses it, he points it straight at us. We are kept. So I want you to hold on to that, because everything that Jude is about to ask of us, is built on the ground of what God has already done for us. You follow me? So we don't have to fight to become kept. We are going to fight because we already are. Now look at verse 3 and watch what happens here, because it's subtle, but it's important. Jude says, "Dear friends, although I was eager to write you about the salvation we share, I found it necessary to write, appealing to you to contend for the faith that was delivered to the saints once for all." Notice what happens here. Jude sits down to write a different letter. He's got his pen out and he's ready to write a warm and encouraging note about the salvation we share, the good stuff, the celebration. He's getting ready to sit down and go, "Jesus loves me, this I know." But then he stops. He says that he found it necessary. Did you guys like that singing, by the way? I'm going to be with 180 next week. Jude says that he found it necessary. Something interrupted him. Something urgent broke into the room. And so he put the nice letter down and he grabs a different one. See, this isn't just Jude's hobby horse here. This isn't a guy who likes to argue. This is a man who saw something so dangerous that he changed his whole letter to warn the people he loved. It's a fire alarm. And when somebody who would rather be encouraging you starts sounding an alarm, you lean in and you listen, right? And in this verse, he uses the word contend. In the original language, contend is an athletic word. It's a wrestling word. The root of that word is actually where we get our English word for agonize. So he's not telling us to have a polite disagreement in small group. He's not saying post a comment on social media. He is saying this is the language of a fighter who has left it all on the mat. Jude says this faith is worth that kind of effort. But don't miss this, because this is where Jude fixes the very problem that we talked about a few minutes ago. Look at what he tells us to contend for. Not our politics or our preference or our right to be the loudest person in the room. Some of y'all were ready to throw hands because we got here this morning and the coffee wasn't made. He's not talking about any of that. He says, contend for the faith, the actual gospel, the real thing that has been handed down. Remember our two ditches? Some of us want to fight about everything, and some people want to fight for nothing. But Jude walks right between those two. He says, yes, fight. You were built for it. But aim it at the one thing actually worth the fight. The faith. Not a funeral for your spouse that isn't happening, but the faith. And look at how he describes the faith. He says, delivered to the saints once for all. That word delivered there, it's a handing off word. It's what you do when you have something valuable and you pass it on to the next person and you say, guard this. The faith that was handed to you, it came to you through somebody, a parent or a friend or a pastor or maybe even a stranger who cared enough to tell you about Jesus. You didn't invent it, you received it. And once for all means it's complete. We don't get to redecorate it or update it and make it sound nice. We don't get to swap out the parts that we don't like. It is a finished deposit. Our job isn't to improve it or to make it shinier or nicer looking for other people. Our job is to hold it and then hand it on. And right there is the whole reason why I've gone on and on and on about discipleship and being an intentional disciple all year long, because the faith is a relay. Somebody ran their leg and put the baton in our hand, and now we're called to run with it and pass it on to the next person. And we can't hand off what we refuse to hold, right? Imagine running in a relay race and you look down and you realize you don't have the baton to hand on to the next person. It gets a little awkward, right? So now look at verse 4. This is where Jude tells us what set off the alarm, why he changed his letter. Take a look. He says, "For some people who were designated for this judgment long ago have come in by stealth. They are ungodly, turning the grace of our God into sensuality and denying Jesus Christ, our only Master and Lord." Notice here where Jude says the danger is. There's not a mob outside the gates. He says the people have come in by stealth. They crept in. They are inside. They are in the room. The call is coming from inside the house. See, the threat to the faith is almost never a frontal assault. It's a slow drift. It's subtle. It slips in the side while everybody else is distracted. And it does two things. Watch. First, it takes the grace of God, the most beautiful thing that we have, and it turns it into a permission slip. You might hear things. You've probably heard something along the lines of, well, God's grace covers it, so it doesn't really matter how I live. That is called free grace theology. It's heresy. It's not true. That's the moral drift. Grace twisted into a license for us to do whatever we want, whenever we want, because God's grace covered it all, so I can just go do whatever and everything's fine. And then the second issue is that it ends up, as Jude says, denying Jesus Christ, our only Master and Lord. That is the doctrinal drift, where Jesus stops being the one in charge and starts becoming more of a mascot and a nice idea, just optional. You've probably heard sermons like this. They mention Jesus a couple of times, and the rest of it is just a really nice TED talk on how to live and be a good person, right? One drift attacks how we live, and the other attacks who Jesus is. And both of them creep in. They don't kick the door down. So here's where this text leaves us. There is a faith that is worth fighting for. It was handed to us at a cost. And it's under a constant threat. And we, because we were made to fight, we're not too weak to fight it. Remember the word tying this whole thing together? That word kept? We are kept. And the God who is asking us to contend is the same God, this very second, holding on to us. We're not fighting for our security. We're fighting from it. So here's where this gets personal. I'm not asking you to go fist fight somebody in the parking lot over the Bible, okay? If you decide to do that, please do it off campus so we don't have to report anything to anybody. But here's where it gets personal. There are 3 moves that I would like for you to take this week. And if you're a note taker, this is where you take notes. First, know it. Here's the hard truth. You can't contend for a faith that you don't actually know. Okay? You can't defend what you can't explain. You can't hand somebody a baton that you're not holding. Earlier, I named it. A lot of us aren't sure that we could explain what we believe or why we believe it. We've been consuming the faith for years, and we still couldn't articulate it to a coworker. And hear me, I'm not here to shame you over that, but what I want to encourage you this week is this simple move. Open the Bible and read it. Read this letter. Read the entire book of Jude. It's just 25 verses. We scroll past more words than that before breakfast. Read it on Tuesday morning before you pick up your phone. Read it Wednesday night before you go to bed. Read it Thursday at lunch instead of scrolling on TikTok. I promise you the content in Jude is much better than any of the nonsense you're going to see on the internet. And then when you do read it, ask yourself one question. What is this actually asking me to believe and do? We can't carry what we've never picked up. And knowing the word is how we pick it up. The second thing that we can do this week is live it. Remember what set off Jude's alarm? People who took the grace of God and turned it into a permission slip. See, the most powerful argument for faith that we can ever make isn't really a fight at all. It's a life. Nobody at work is going to be argued into the kingdom by us being right. But they might be drawn in by us being different. This week, pick one area of your life right now where you've been treating grace like a permission slip. And you already know the one thing, the thing that you've decided really doesn't count, the thing that you've made the excuse for. God doesn't care about that. He does. And take one step out of it this week. Because we contend for the faith most powerfully when our life stops contradicting it. And then the third thing this week that we can do is to hand it on. This is the whole focus of our year here at the Turning Point in one move. The faith was delivered to each of us, handed on, baton in our hand, and a relay only works if we turn around and pass it on to somebody else. The faith was never meant to die with the person who received it. So here's the most concrete thing that I'll ask of you today. I want you to think of that one name, that person I've been asking you to consider and pray for all year long. Take one step toward them this week. You're not signing up to be their pastor. You don't need a curriculum for it. Just ask them a real question about their life. Invite them to coffee. Invite them to church. Tell them one true thing that God has done in your life. Just put your hand out with the baton in it. That's it. That's discipleship in a nutshell. It's not complicated. It's just intentional. So know it and live it and hand it on. In other words, to use the language that Jude uses in this letter, receive the faith, hold the faith, and pass on the faith. That is the Christian life. And notice, none of those is something that you do from the couch. We were built to fight, but it doesn't have to be over a thermostat or a hypothetical funeral. Let's all aim that God-given fight at the one thing that's actually important. And here's the thing that I cannot stress strongly enough. This is not something that you can do harder by gritting your teeth and trying to muscle through it on your own. To be a disciple, it means that you finally believe the first word that Jude spoke over you, that you are kept, that we fight from security and not for it, held the whole time. But maybe you're new here this morning and you don't know if you're ready for this. Maybe this is all new to you. Maybe you've heard about Jesus, but you've never met him. Or maybe it's been years and somewhere along the way, you walked away. Here's the gospel, friends. The reason that any of us can be kept to begin with is that Jesus refused to keep himself. He is the one who actually contended for you and for me. He went all the way to the cross, stepping into our mess, and he fought a fight that we could never win, and he won it, and he rose. That, friends, is why we are kept. You don't have to get your act together. You don't have to pass a test or prove that you belong. The whole point of grace is that it is given and not earned. Jesus already did the fighting. All that he is asking of you this morning, if you don't know him, is to simply stop running and be held. If that's you today, all you have to do is pray and say, Lord, I want to be kept. Tell him you're done running and follow him. It is the simplest and yet most powerful prayer that you can ever pray. That is the whole story, church. We don't fight to become kept. We fight because we already are. So join me this week in fighting for what matters.